Leadership needs to lead. You actually need strong leadership. You need to have a vision. It needs to be communicated and it needs to be executed. And too often, leadership leads from behind. And that doesn't work in business. You have to be out there. You have to motivate your people.
Richard Solomon, noted attorney, the Solomon Channel. Yes, I'm going to let you get in a word edgewise here. We're co-hosting, yeah.
Thank you for the privilege of being here. And by the way, Happy New Year. And it's hard to, happy 7-year anniversary.
That's correct. That is on the radio side. What is that? So that's 7.5 years or 6.5 years? We started in mid-2015. So let's just add, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So it's 6.5 years of solid radio. That's right. We're entering our, and calendar year, it's what is that? 7, 8? Yeah. So
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
For you, how has radio evolved? Because it's definitely changed over the years. You're business class now. Tell me about what is the dynamic changes that you've experienced in that window of 7 years?
Yeah. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to we have a very exciting show planned, and which is called the School of Hard Knocks. I just want to make sure the listeners, hang on, because we're going to be sharing some real world experience that you could take and use in your business. And myself and Richard Solomon, who's been in the field for decades, we're going to be sharing some real world stuff. But as far as radio, listen, radio, the way I interpret it, there's no question. There are additional channels today. There's Instagram, and of course there's the podcasting channels. And you need to be on all those channels because that's where America is consuming media. However, radio has not died and probably will never die. Radio has a certain magnitude, electric, whether a person is listening to it in the car or even at home. And yet, but here's really the key. Being on real radio provides the credibility, right? Because anyone can start a podcast, right? All you need is you go to Adorama, B&H, you go, whatever you go, Focus Electronics, you go to any of the retailers and you buy a couple of items, and for under... might even be $500, right? And certainly under $1,000. Certainly
under $1,200.
Under $1,200,
yeah.
You get yourself set up. So really, how much? How much do you think you need to invest to have a good, decent setup? At least $100. Hey, you lowered the bar there. But let's say $1,200, you're set, and you're up on Spotify and Apple. All very nice, all great. But real radio. That's what we always say. We're on 710, and before and on a competitive station. We're not getting into trouble here. On a competitive station to 710 WOR, but that's real radio, the magic of real radio, and then it gets put on podcast and on YouTube and everything else. That's the magic that radio has and will have.
So, because it's the new year, why don't we start with some of the wisdom that you've acquired and over all those years in marketing and all those years in radio, all those years in podcasting. Let's get to some of those nuggets right now.
All right. Now, we put down that we're going to co-host. So is it okay if, let's say, because you've been I'm not dodging the question, by the way. Not like, what was that? Okay, the weather actually tonight, it's no. We're going to share real world stuff. However, if you could also return the favor to this great audience of the Mind Your Business show, and also maybe we could actually take turns. I'll share a point, and then maybe you could share a point, and we'll go back and forth until we're hot by the clock, as Country Yossi used to say.
I got my notes ready.
Okay, amazing. And of course, this will be up on YouTube, by the way. Or those of you that subscribe to our YouTube channel, you're automatically notified when this show will go live on YouTube. To subscribe on YouTube, we're at 710 WOR Mind Your Business, 710 WOR Mind Your Business, and you'll automatically be notified and when this goes live. Now, okay, I'm going to open. Now, this can go an area, and by the way, thank God, this is actually our 30th anniversary at Bottom Line Marketing Group, BLMG. We started in 1992. So, in tonight's show, Richard and myself, we're going to share, that's why we're calling it the School of Hard Knocks, real world business advice and takeaways that could be applied really in any type of workplace, in any organization, any corporation, whether you're a business of one or a Fortune 100 company. There's just solid stuff that we're going to be sharing. Okay, the first thing that I would like to share is something that came to mind many, many years ago, but it certainly came a few years into being in business, and that is plan for plan A, prepare for plan B. Again, plan for plan A, prepare for plan B. And what that basically is that a person has to always be prepared for plan B. Now, of course, you script out and have everything down and drill down in order to make sure that your plan A is solid, makes sense, and doesn't ignore reality. It factors in common sense and experience and talent and all that. But guess what? Sometimes there are surprises, right? I mean, this is 2022.
Curveballs.
Look at 2020, right? The surprise that was thrown on every business. So a business, for anyone to be successful, not just a business, for anyone in their life, it's okay to chart out plan A, have plan A all down to a science. However, prepare for plan B.
All right. I've got one.
Okay, ready? Your turn.
All right. Providence favors the bold. You got to take chances. You got to take chances in business. Not risky chances. Everything has to be measured. But you and I took chances by being in radio. We took chances by writing books. You took chances by doing business class. Those are all chances. But if you, we were way back when we were all dating. A friend of mine's like, "Oh, I don't need to do this," and I said, "Who are you going to meet in your living room? You got to get out there, right? You got to get out there." So it's the same thing. You have to be out there. And even though the world is a lot different now, there's less trade shows, there's all this virtual stuff, you need to increase your surface area. You need to be out in the real world as much as you can. You need to always still have business cards. The rules haven't changed, and you need to be bold. You need to take chances. You need to express yourself, shine, show your unique attributes, your unique approaches to business, your unique marketing ideas.
Excellent. All right, Richard, now I'll jump in. I love this one. Don't give up before you try. It sounds so simple. Don't give up before you try, but I hear it all the time. There are times when people are like, "Oh, well, it's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z." Now, we can't ignore reality. There are times when you can't ignore common sense. You have to factor in real-world realities. But at the same time, don't give up. There's so many times people just like, it's just not going to work out. I said, did you try? Did you try? Don't give up before you try. Very important advice. Richard, your turn.
All right. You must be your own advocate.
And this is coming from an attorney. Richard is a noted attorney.
I'm going to give you two for the price of one. You need to be your own advocate, and you need to be your own customer support. All right. Advocate for yourself. If you think you have an idea, advocate for yourself. If you feel you're not being heard, you're not getting your message across, advocate. Don't just stand there. Advocate.
Wow. I'm co-hosting tonight's show with Richard Solomon, noted attorney, and, of course, on the host of the Solomon Channel.
I'm going to just jump right in. We're doing this great stuff. We had all these great nuggets of wisdom that we've been accumulating just for this particular show. So one of the things that I would like to say is don't overplay a bad hand. One of the things that you see in business all the time, negotiations and trade-offs, whatever, like settlement negotiations in a lawsuit, because I kind of familiar with that. And I see people overplaying constantly a bad hand. It's like you just have a 2, a jack, and a 6. That's a terrible hand, and they're playing it if it's a royal flush or a straight flush. And don't overplay a bad hand. If you have a bad hand, make the most of it, but don't overplay it.
Such a smart suggestion and advice that you're sharing, because people sometimes just hold on to it. They just don't get it, that they're displaying a weakness. Got
to cut your losses. You got to know when to hold them. Got to know when to fold them.
Now, okay, I'm going to jump in now with one, which is actually in a similar vein. Okay, similar vein. Don't cry over spilled milk, but don't let the milk spill again. Okay, so again, don't cry over spilled milk, but don't let the milk spill again. What am I bringing out with that? That is that, hey, people are human. People make mistakes. It happens. People make mistakes. I mean, but what are you doing to ensure that the mistake is not repeated? So often, people make the same mistakes again and again and again and again. So don't cry over the spilled milk. You made a mistake. Don't beat yourself up too hard on it. Fine. However, call a timeout. Do a postmortem. Call a timeout. What could I have done differently to avoid repeating the same mistake? That's why my quote here is, don't cry over spilled milk, but don't let the milk spill again. Richard, your turn. Yeah.
So a long time ago, I was listening to a rock interview of Carlos Santana, the guitarist and famous musician. And one thing he said that really struck me was, change is inevitable, growth is an option. And it really stuck because change is truly inevitable. If you look at the way the world was in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010, 2020, in business, how things were done, the transitions of technology. I mean, we're on Zoom now. Who knew what Zoom was? This is like what the Jetsons thought about in the 1960s. But growth truly is an option, because if you're not willing to change and adapt and to embrace, you will be left behind.
All right, I guess it's my turn, Richard. Okay.
It's like a tennis match.
We've been going back and forth here. All right, here. You ready? Never guess when the data exists. This is, I also can't tell you how often I see this, that people are having a conversation and then I guess. Now, when the data does not exist, it's okay to guess, and it should be it's called a guesstimate. You know, it's something that comes from life experience and wisdom and a variety of other factors, and then you can make a calculated risk decision, but it's based on information you don't have. However, never guess when the data exists. It's so important. If you're having a conversation with someone and there is data to back it up, why guess? Why? Just call a timeout. Say, you know what? I'm going to check that out. I'm going to get the actual data. So never guess when the data exists.
So I have one that's sort of a part A and part B, which is be careful of hot mics and be careful when you hit reply all. So what is that? A lot of times there's Zoom meetings and people think that the Zoom meeting is over. And I stayed on one Zoom meeting and I heard all of the people talking about their settlement parameters, which they really shouldn't have done, because I learned all about what their cards were in the whole settlement game. And then someone said, is Rich still on? And I just said, yeah. But I heard 20 minutes of, pretty much banter that maybe, they should have kept, to themselves. The other thing is be careful when you hit reply all, because sometimes you get emails. And like, for example, in the court system, you get, all these people, including judges and judges, staff. And then you'll see someone hit reply all like, well, that was a waste of time. And it's like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. So be careful when you hit reply all.
Oh, great advice. All right, I guess it's my turn. Okay. By the way, Richard, we got to make sure that this is copyrighted. We're sharing real world stuff, and some of these are unique lines. They're our own lines. So,
well, under Title 17 of the U.S. Code, when this expression is recorded, it's automatically copyrighted.
Amazing.
But I'll make sure that we register it.
All right. Amazing. It's good. Folks, if you want to get Richard, by the way, Richard, if people want to get you on their team, how could they get in touch with you for their, if they need a great attorney?
The best place to find me is at thesolomonchannel.com. You can call my office. Obviously, I'm not there right now because it's Sunday night, but 516-371-4924 during regular business hours, and I won't hit reply all. If you send an email.
Okay, you ready for this one? All right. Never be oblivious to the obvious. Okay, never be oblivious to the obvious. And that is, in today's day and age, and I know for those out there that follow politics, this is pretty obvious, no pun intended there, that there's, unfortunately, and even for the media, there's so much that goes on where they're just oblivious to the obvious. But I'm talking about in the business sense, in the business world. There are many times that people are charting out, let's say, for example, here by BLMG, Bottom Line Marketing Group, we're charting out a campaign. And let's say we identify a certain media source that would be a great way of communicating the message. However, let's say there's some type of other circumstance, like, never be oblivious to the obvious. Yeah, I'll give you here. This is a great example. Do you know that there was a polling company that needed to get a poll to figure out how Orthodox Jewish voters would vote in a certain election? Okay. Now, in general, polling that's taking place by phone calls are done when? On Friday night. All right. So the polling company wasn't getting any type of results because guess what? Good morning. They're calling Orthodox Jews on Friday night. That's Shabbos. Hello, they were oblivious to the obvious. Okay, they didn't know that. But the point is, many times, people out there, if you just think about what you're suggesting, make sure that it's rock solid, the idea is solid. Never be oblivious to the obvious.
All right, I got one. This is an expression that comes from a foreign language that's translated, and it goes like, that's because they know 45 pages more than the book. So where does that come from? So you see people, they get advice and they don't listen, and then it blows up. And I was in a situation where I was watching this thing melt down, and someone whispered to me, that's because they know 45 pages more than the book. So
yeah.
Don't it's like overplaying a bad hand, and don't overreach.
Yeah. All right, I'll jump in here with one. Day one will always be day one. Start day one today. Why do I say that? Because many times people are waiting for the kind of the perfect opportunity to jump in and not realizing that kind of nothing is perfect. In fact, one of our guests, Stephen Gaffney, had a great line. He said, people suffer from perfectionitis. They suffer from perfectionitis. That they're waiting to get started because the whole scenario has to be perfect. No. Get started. It's okay to operate in wet clay. Day one will always be day one. Start day one today. Meaning just jump in and get started, because by pushing off day one, you're just pushing off. Whenever you start, it's anyways going to be day one. So just start day one today.
So my next one is, what makes you think I put everything in the book? Give you a good example.
Okay.
I was litigating in small claims court, and my opponent takes out my book and says, this is a great book. And we just trashed and killed him. And as I walked out, I said to him, what makes you think I put everything in the book that I know? So always reach for real expertise, not just the book, but the real. So when you need marketing, you go to Yitzchok, not just the book.
Now, by the way, once you talked about your book, that's the book in How to Win in Small Claims Court?
Winning in the New York Small Claims Court. Now out of print, long time. But at the time, my adversary went to the bookstore, actually brought it to court and showed it to me. And when we thumped him, it was like, what makes you think I wrote everything that I know? Got to save something, right?
Oh, man. Okay. Jumping in. Okay. Which one? Okay. Pessimists focus on challenges. Optimists focus on solutions. Again, what an important, this is really a profound one. Pessimists focus on challenges. Optimists focus on solutions, meaning that there are people out there that they just kind of always run into problems. In fact, Norm Trainer has a great way of saying that. He said there are problem finders and problem solvers. Optimists focus on solving issues. They just, there's no roadblocks. There's only speed bumps. They understand there's some challenges along the way, but they don't obsess with the challenge. They focus on the solution. and they are successful in their goals. However, the pessimist always kind of spirals downward and just obsesses with the challenges and therefore can't move forward.
Be careful when talking to the media. So when it comes to the media, don't talk to people who buy ink by the barrel. Save your grievances for Festivus.
Now, 1 second. We're considered the media here,
Right, but we don't have people come on our shows and air their grievances and trash people.
That's correct.
And I've seen that. I've seen that in the last year where people have said things that were pretty undoable. And when we were analyzing this, someone leaned over and whispered to me, there's an expression. You don't talk to people who buy ink by the barrel. Yeah. Because they'll print it.
That's a great advice.
And then it's there forever. And then you can't undo it. And you can't unhear it and you can't unsay it.
Yeah, you can't undo it. My guest, or my co-host tonight, is Richard Solomon, the noted attorney, also famous from the Solomon Channel. And we're talking about what we've learned in the School of Hard Knocks. We've both been in business for over 3 decades now. And we're sharing a lot of real-world advice that you could take and apply in your workplace, whether it's an organization, it's a small business, a major business, real-world advice learned from the front lines of business. Richard, I'm going to, I'd like to toss it to you if you could start this next segment.
Leadership needs to lead. You actually need strong leadership. You need to have a vision. It needs to be communicated, and it needs to be executed. And too often, leadership leads from behind. And that doesn't work in business. You have to be out there. You have to motivate your people. You have to problem solve. You need to plan for plan A, assume that you may have to have plan B or C or D, be resilient, know that change is inevitable, and, embrace it all. There's a lot of dynamic uncertainty out there.
That's great. Okay. The quote that I'd like to share now actually has to do with my line of work, and that is, marketing's role is to educate. The role of sales is to close. Now, this is very important. Now, for those that are in the sales and marketing world, they usually do realize this, but I know when I've shared this line, it hits home in a very strong way, and that is, the role of marketing is to educate, to create awareness, to build out the environment, to establish a narrative. However, the role of sales, a salesperson has to close. The role of a salesperson is not to educate. Ideally, when a salesperson walks into a room to close a deal, the prospective client, the customer, is fully educated on the product in advance. And that's why the quote I'd like to share now is, marketing's role is to educate. The sales role is to close.
All right, this one is from Ben Franklin.
All right.
The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. And that is so true throughout the ages. It's a good deal until it breaks. And customer service is a busy signal.
But Richard, let's hold on to that. That's such important advice. People, listen, everyone likes a good deal. Yay. Everyone likes a good deal. But value is so much more important. And of course, until the person finds out the hard way that the good deal came at a steep price, and that is in time, in frustration, and that was the price, then it hits them like, maybe I should have paid the extra $1.50.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take the next one. That was a great one. I had to come back with these. Okay. All right. An excuse is vindication for future negligence. Yeah. Now,
I have to use that one.
I want to explain that, what we had in mind. What happens is that, again, people make mistakes. As discussed earlier, people make mistakes. Fine. Yet, now, of course, if a person makes mistakes too frequently, that is a problem. Okay. However, when you're, let's say, even for a team leader meets with someone on the team, and they discuss a certain issue that went wrong. And the person who made the error is getting very defensive, and suddenly they just start giving excuses. Guess what? When they're giving the excuse, what they're basically saying, they may not realize it, but they're basically saying, guess what? I probably will do this again, and it's just the way it is. An excuse is vindication for future negligence. Rather, leaders and people, not just leaders, people that are responsible people, they don't give excuses. They're like, they own up to it, and that ensures or goes a great length, goes a great distance to ensure that they're not going to do it again because they didn't give the excuse. The excuse is just a vindication for future negligence.
If someone says, I can't afford it, believe them. Believe them big time. We see all the time, you throw out a quote, people, they put their head down and they go, I don't think we could swing that. It's not in our budget. And then the voracious selling team is like, no, you could do this, you could do that. It'll bring you to a new level. The answer is if they can't afford it, believe it. And maybe it's the signal that you don't really need that business, or maybe you have to sell them a lower level product or service.
That's great, Richard. All right, I'll jump in. In business relationships, never ignore the bias in the environment. Now, of course, in the political world, this is quite obvious. If you're going to take we're not going to get into examples here. We're going to get into trouble, whatever it is. But the fact is, certain political or elected officials can't really appear these days on certain media channels because they'll just get beaten up because there's a bias in the environment. Whereas if they go to friendly territory, which is not hostile, they can actually get their voice heard and they can have their narrative, shared with the masses. So this applies in business as well. In business relationships, never ignore the bias in the environment. Means the bias might be that there's a certain past history why there's just going to be some type of friction, or maybe there's some type of relationship, a familial relationship there that would cause either the deal to go better or to work against you. But again, in business relationships, never ignore the bias in the environment.
I've seen the movie and I know how it ends. A lot of times clients will come to a lawyer and they'll say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I bet you, blah, blah, blah. And you just look at them and you say, I've seen the movie. I know how it ends. And it's a very sad ending. Or it doesn't end that way. And there's no alternative ending that's on the, in the wings.
On tonight's show, my co-host is none other than Richard Solomon. Brother Richard. Richard, how you doing? It's great to have you on the show.
You are my radio brother for sure. I bet you're my brother in so many other ways too.
Thank you.
A warm embrace and a happy New Year.
That's it. Thank you. And on tonight's show, we're actually discussing from both of us. I mean, we've each been out in the field for over 3 decades. So that makes you're getting 6.5 decades worth of experience tonight packed in to this 1 hour show. How do you like that? And if you tuned in late, you missed quite a bit. But as I mention each week, by Tuesday morning, it will be up on all the popular podcasting channels. You consume your media on Spotify, terrific. iTunes, Google, whichever. And within 2 weeks, it will be up on YouTube. And that's really exciting. So you'll be able to watch this. And by the way, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe today, and you'll automatically be notified. We're on YouTube. We're at 710 WOR Mind Your Business, 710 WOR Mind Your Business, and a special shout out to Business Class. Many of the concepts and ideas that were discussed and will still be discussed on tonight's show will become Business Class Clips. On Instagram, we're at Business Class Clips. Again, that's the daily 1 minute or less business tip that you could take in order to be successful in the world. And we're also, this year we added TikTok. So we're on Instagram and TikTok. We're also on WhatsApp for those that would prefer to get by WhatsApp. But the easiest way, just go to Instagram. Well, on tonight's show, we are sharing some one-liners, quotes, that either from others or from ourselves, Richard Solomon and myself here, Yitzchok Saftlas, that was learned by being out there in the front lines over the years. I'm going to, Richard, I'll jump in. Yeah? I'll get it started this segment.
Go ahead.
Okay. Any runs. Okay, go. Okay. All right. Any runs you score in the first inning, you don't need to score in the ninth inning. And what we mean by that is that, let's say it's a campaign, let's say a fundraising effort, or some type of direct response campaign, and you're selling, or a raffle campaign. Don't just, I've had this many cases where people will kind of, keep all the eggs in the basket and save their firepower for just the ending. Now, I'm not denying that there are certain inflection points in any type of campaign, but try to be successful early on. Imagine, and we'll use Major League Baseball. Any runs you score in the first inning, you don't have to score in the ninth inning. So if they go out there and they're hungry and they come back and knock in 5 runs, guess what? There is a cushion for their starter. That is true. Any runs you score in the first inning, you don't need to score in the ninth inning. Richard, your turn.
Anger is not a management tool. I have seen in so many business contexts, managers or upper echelon people literally yelling at people for mistakes, for whatever. And it doesn't work, and it's demeaning, and it could be embarrassing, and if it's in public, it could be deemed abusive. So I always say, anger is not a management tool.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right, now I'm going to jump in. We're going to discuss the garage rule. All right, you ready for this one?
I'm ready. I got my catcher's mitt.
Okay. The garage rule. When something is broken, throw it out immediately. Don't move it to storage to collect dust and cobwebs and then throw it out 20 years later anyway. Meaning, now, of course, there are certain things. I'm not saying throw everything out. We know that there are certain things that may have a use at a later date. And of course, in that case, hold on to it. But there are many things that are just broken. If it's broken, throw it out. What's the point of sticking it in storage and then 20 years later, you're finally cleaning out that garage or whatever, that storage room, like, yeah, this is just garbage. Why didn't you just throw it out 20 years ago? That's the garage rule.
I started with nothing, and I have most of it left. So, one of my favorite quotes. There's this concept that you need money to make money, and I always joke with people, and I've interviewed a lot of very famous people like Steve Wozniak, and they say, I started with nothing. And a lot of them really have. They started a very humble means, and yet they built empires, products that are standard to everyday life. So I always joke around. I started with nothing. I have most of it left. Now, the truth is you don't want to have most of it left, except maybe only in the first inning.
Oh, great point. Okay, my turn. Okay. Being a great problem solver can actually be a great problem. Again, being a great problem solver can actually be a great problem. And what that means is that, it's especially for management within a company. If the manager is always going to jump in and be the safety net and solve the problem, then that's a problem, because guess what? The team is not going to be acclimated and trained on how to solve the problems on their own. So if you have someone as a great problem solver, that's great. But don't try to just always save the day, jump in to save the day, because guess what? You will condition the team to always run to you to bail them out. You have to train people on how they can also solve problems. And that's why I say being a great problem solver can actually be a great problem.
Strike while the iron is cold. Okay, why cold? All right.
Okay.
A lot of times there's heated discussion and there's a lot of emotion, and you can't talk to people because it's just too hot. They talk about like hot landing zones in the military and things like that. Sometimes you need to wait for things to cool down so that calmer heads can prevail. So that's why you strike while the iron is cold.
That's great. All right, you ready for the next one? Just hit send. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, of course, by the way, with any rule, there are exceptions to the rule. I just want to put that out there. But just hit send. This reminds me, my guest that we had on the show, Jack Friedler, years ago told me that he was about to do a big real estate deal. He's involved in real estate, City View Commercial, and his partner at the time was reviewing a major, all the paperwork and the documentation for the deal, and he really wanted to make it happen. So he shared it with Jack, and Jack was reviewing it, and Jack was a little concerned about it, but his partner, who actually had much more experience, was gung ho on the deal. So Jack started to express a little bit of reservation, and all of a sudden his partner just hit send. Now, Jack admitted to me later on, he said that was the right thing. He said because he didn't have the experience really to decide, did it make sense, didn't make sense. He said his partner really had a much better finger on the pulse. He really knew that industry so much better, and therefore he said it was a great thing. He said just hit send. Now, of course, every circumstance, everyone has to know what the particular situation is. You can't always hit send if like what Richard said before, don't hit reply to all necessarily. But if you have something, you thought about it, you went over it so many times, you looked at it from the right, from the left, whatever it is, and it's kind of ready, don't be afraid. Just hit send.
Don't send your opponents your newsletter. All right, so let me tell you about something that happened to me. I was in an adversarial relationship with a law firm, and somehow they put me on their newsletter list. And it has all of their strategies and what they do in these kind of cases and that kind of cases. And I started using it as counterintelligence. Because I'm like, oh, in these kind of cases, they always do this, and this is what they do, and this is their shtick, So I started data mining. So every month I get their newsletter while I'm still litigating with them, and then I started writing. So I wrote down, "Don't send your opponents your newsletter."
All right, I'll jump in with one. Don't aim to be great at everything. Rather, be great at something. And we know there are other quotes that are similar along this line. But if someone is great at something, they will be known for that, and they'll become the go-to person for that. But when someone stretches themselves too thin, and Richard, right there are quotes to this effect. A master, right? What was that famous quote about the master? In fact,
the jack of all trades and a master of none.
That's it. That's this similar idea where someone spreads themselves too thin, and they're just like, all right, I'm gonna really master everything, and then they basically a master of none, right? So that's what this quote is. Don't aim to be great at everything. Rather, be great at something.
This one will surprise you because it came from one of the sheriffs of New York City. Only Richard Solomon can sue people and make friends with them. and what it is that do your job, even if it's a little unpleasant what you do, but be diplomatic, be nice, be professional, because you don't need to scorch the earth to prove your point, especially if you're right.
Great point. Well, we're actually running low on time. However, I think we can get in one more for each of us. All right. So I'll jump in and then I'll let you close out, Richard. All right. Don't just look to solve an immediate problem. Rather, resolve to look and solve the root of the problem. The reason why I say that is because so many times people are, fixing the pothole, and the pothole keeps happening. So I'm like, why are you just showing up with that pavement truck and not looking at the roadbed itself and fixing it so you don't have to come back every 2 months in order to refill the pothole? Don't just look to solve the problem, the immediate problem. What's the root of the problem? Why did it happen? And then you'll be able to snuff out that issue so that the problem doesn't happen again in the future.
Stand by your product. If you can't stand by it, don't sell it and don't offer it. So often people call customer service and they either don't support the product or they don't know how to support the product, or it's, well, you bought it too bad. You got to support your product. You have to stand behind it. That's your reputation. That's your brand. And by the way, the internet will make sure that that reputation is spread far and wide if you don't.
That's right. Wow, what a great show. First of all, it's always great to have Richard Solomon on. We shared quite a bit. Again, Richard, how can people find out more information and get in touch with you?
The Solomon channel is like I'm on YouTube and all these other places, but the best place to find me is the Solomon channel, SOLOMON, thesolomonchannel.com, 516-371-4924. Call me. That's my office line during business hours if I'm not suing people and making friends with them.
Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.